Hello everyone, I'm Julian Morris with the Channel 5 News. In the headlines, head of the Builders and Contractors Association wants a wider spread of money being spent on Dominica's current construction boom. The Ministry of Education to maintain the size of school structures in spite of a smaller student population, and a call for fresh training to keep taxi operators in line with tourism industry standards. The details of the news coming up.
Imagine you have Hollywood at your command. Introducing Flow Evil.
Red cheese, gold rings, all black, everything creeping through the night.
Anywhere you are.
Big girls don't scream hard like Halloween, make me feel alive. Oh.
There's a world of entertainment here, and you run the show. Flow Evil.
President of the Builders and Contractors Association of Dominica says he'd like to see a wider circulation of funds being spent in the country's construction projects.
Following the destruction of Hurricane Maria, Dominica embarked on a vigorous drive to construct resilient structures for those who lost houses during the storm. The housing projects are being funded by the Citizenship by Investment program, with contract firms being sourced overseas. BCAD's president, Anthony LeBlanc, believes there should be a greater trickle-down effect of the funds being used on the housing projects.
As it is now, the private sector, the official private sector, is at its weakest. It's really engaged in a desert environment for growth. There have been very little growth. I see ECLAC have given a 9% increase in economy and GDP for Dominica. That's nice, but it's not trickling down. CBI money is not trickling down for the economy. The people who build houses, the money comes from overseas, the money goes back overseas. There's really very little real opportunity for engagement, for distribution of the money, for circulation of the money from CBI. Except for aggregate and a little bit of employment, we get nothing.
In December 2018, the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, released a report stating Dominica's economy was expected to grow by 9% in 2019. Local economist McCarthy Marie attributed this growth to the booming construction industry. LeBlanc says BCAD has taken steps to try to get more local contractors involved in the growing construction sector.
We had discussions very early with the World Bank. Because we knew that they were going on a housing drive. And housing is the backbone of the contractors. Most contractors do housing. Very few of us do civil works only. So that's one. We intended to do that. We're working with some funding agents to look at putting CVQ in place so that the contractors have workmen to work with and train workmen.
LeBlanc admits that while local builders could get a bigger piece of the pie, they did benefit somewhat from the ripple effect of the destruction caused by the storm.
In the immediate, contractors have benefited from the boom because insurance money came in and a lot of housing repairs were done. Not all of it because it's too much. We never had this market before in our lifetime, and hopefully we'll never have it again. So we couldn't all do it. So we had foreign contractors coming in to play a part.
Dominica's housing sector suffered an over $1 billion blow from Hurricane Maria. Andrea Louis, Channel 5 News.
Education officials have promised that renovated school plants will remain the same despite the dwindling school population. Andrea Louis reports.
Throughout the years, the decreasing school population has been observed, be it through the number of children who register in any particular year or the numbers which sit national exams. The school plants damaged by Hurricane Maria provide an opportunity to build back better and stronger facilities for the children. Chief Education Officer Melina Fontaine says the renovated schools will remain the same size regardless the size of the school population.
We believe in all schools being where they are in communities. Schools are really community schools. So there has been no effort to shut down any school because of the decreasing population. And what you will find is that sometimes there may be a decrease in a certain place because children, although we have a zoning mechanism in place where you go to school in your locality, but we also have to recognize that sometimes parents work away from their areas, and so when they do that, they take their children with them. And so what you will find sometimes is that a decrease in population does not necessarily mean that the students are not around. Okay, and what we have to change for us is to ensure that every school is on its mark and working towards the success of each and every child.
Several friendly international partners have come on board to help with the refurbishment and reconstruction of schools. Fontaine gave an update on the island-wide school rehabilitation project.
We have a number of new schools being built, some by China, and major renovation by Canada through CDB and the government of India and Carnival Cruise Lines, and the government of Dominica is doing quite a bit. Materials being ordered, we are waiting for them. So work has not stopped, and we don't see work stopping for the next couple of years. We've done Paybush, Mont Prosper, Mont Prosper, Paybush, through Hands and Hearts, and we have work going on at Woodford Hill and Sineku, Sally Beer, all over.
Just last week, the Maria Holder Memorial Trust handed over the keys to the newly refurbished Trafalgar Primary School.
Invest Dominica Authority continues to play a pivotal role in facilitating the restoration of the private business sector post-Hurricane Maria. The Investor Services Unit facilitates the investor by providing information on the investment process. The Investor Services Unit basically walks the potential investor through from inception to the commencement of the project. Aftercare services are also provided to ensure the investor's project remains viable and sustainable.
We also advocate for legislative changes that will facilitate and improve the private sector. In the Investor Services Unit, we process requests for fiscal incentives, that is to say concessions. The government, under the Fiscal Incentive Act and the Hotel Aids Act, provides that relief from taxes, exemption from the payment of import duty on building material, equipment, machinery, provides a tax holiday, exemption from value-added tax in certain cases. That will all support and improve the private sector to facilitate and help with economic growth. Albeit applications are processed, it's on an application basis. We look at the request and we see how best we can facilitate.
The Investor Services also collaborates and coordinates with other government agencies for implementation of government initiatives.
We've heard mention of the Special Tourism Fund at the Aid Bank. IDA is integral in facilitating clients and investors to access that fund. We've heard of government provided special concessions after Hurricane Maria. IDA is also integral in that process. We've heard of a number of CBI projects that are ongoing. IDA is part of that, and the Investor Services Unit helps with all of those.
And President of the Combined Taxi Inc., Philip Gist, says taxi operators need fresh training. Gist made the comments during the ongoing 2018-2019 cruise season. He says there is need to train operators as new people are coming into the industry and standards must be maintained for the cruise visitors.
We have had a number of operators died over the last 2-3 years. Some of them have been replaced. I think we are now pressing that Discover Dominica Authority do a program to bring in new blood to the system, get some new operators. But again, we don't want to press it because, as again, the hurdle of the pricing for the organized stores, which we can make the organized stores more lucrative, so somebody can be able to go to the bank and attract a loan.
Gist lamented that taxi operators still have trouble accessing funds through a loan facility at the Aid Bank. He says if the cost of the tours was standardized across the board, this may help the situation.
The tourism facility at the Aid Bank has made provisions for the taxi drivers to be able to access those monies. But in Dominica, we always have to cross the T's and dot the I's. That has not been done. So to be able to get the drivers to access the 2% at the aid bank. That's a great facility if we can get the concessions of the big buses. So it means you'll be able to have a better fleet of vehicles, one, and you'll be able to have more capacity. So the tour companies can sell motors, because most of them are curtailed. They cut sales at a certain amount. If it's 100 or 200 or 300, whatever, then they can't go further. And that's not good for the cruise ships. Most of them like to sell as much as they can sell.
You are watching Channel 5 News. We'll have more after this.
Imagine you have Hollywood at your command. Introducing Flow Evil.
Red cheese, gold rings, all black, everything creeping through the night.
Anywhere you are,
Big girls don't scream hard like Halloween, make me feel alive.
there's a world of entertainment here, and you run the show. Flow Evil.
A senior investment promotions officer at Invest Dominica Authority has provided some guidelines to potential investors on which areas are in step with government's vision for the country. Traditionally, IDA entertains potential investors who are looking at areas which government would consider a priority. Hermina Augustine outlined some of these areas in a recent GIS interview.
Our sectors have to be in line with what government wants, or in terms of government's vision for the country. So I can't just come up and because I think something is good or it sounds good, just go ahead and say, well, that's a new sector, or just create my own sector. No. It's from our ministry, we are guided through that vision, and the main areas that government has traditionally been focusing on and targeting are those like tourism, manufacturing. We have areas like the BPO and call centers, business processing of, and also water export. So this we have been doing over the years. Services, we also focus a bit on cultural industries, which is a very important sector to government. And all of those also have even sub-sectors like tourism, for example. We have accommodation. We also have other services which support tourism, like if you think of things like adventure parks. Health and wellness is very, very important. It falls under tourism, health and wellness, or spas. And I mean, from just being around in Dominica, you know, these are all places which have a lot of potential for even for the growth. But to support government's vision as well towards building a resilient country, and the Honorable Prime Minister announcing that, you know, we want Dominica to be the first climate resilient country in the world, we have actually made some changes and reviewed what we are doing. And we've tried to incorporate in this sector's areas of resilience. So it's really doing things that make businesses rebound in any of these sectors. We encourage getting, you know, utilizing better methods. So we've also looked at sectors like recycling. These are, we see this as an area which has some good potential for other production, manufacturing as well. Also renewable energy. And even not just renewable energy, you know, we've looked at geothermal before. Government has a very strong focus on that. But it's also important that the businesses, the investors who are already in tourism or in manufacturing, to incorporate this in your existing businesses.
Augustine says often the average citizen does not understand that investing in areas such as bottling or exporting of water can be a little more complicated than meets the eye.
Sometimes it's easy to say, oh, we're the land of 365 rivers and we have a lot of water. It is not always, when it comes to investing and having capital to have these projects, you have to look at a lot more, do a lot more feasibility studies. It is not just meeting a spring somewhere and say, oh, we have a lot, what you call the soups with the spring water. And it's not just easy and just bottle and, you know. the entire process of investing and really growing a sector involves a lot more. And sometimes, even in Dominica, it can be very costly. It can be very, very costly. But those I mentioned, tourism, manufacturing, agro-processing, water export, services, the BPO sector, call centers, these are all the sectors that we are currently working on, and we want to continue to expand those in various ways.
A study undertaken in partnership with the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, has found that cervical cancer accounts for between 4.5 to 18% of cancer deaths in the English and Dutch-speaking Caribbean. A CARPHA news release states that in the Caribbean region, cancer is the second leading cause of death, but CARPHA also says healthy choices and early detection can reduce the risk of the disease. The organization says a significant number of cancer deaths can largely be reduced and prevented through many strategies, including primary prevention, early detection, management, and the treatment of patients with cancer. It is believed that nearly 1/2 of cancers are preventable or treatable if detected early. Cervical cancer, one of the most common cancers among women in the Caribbean, remains a significant public health problem. CARPHA says breast and cervical cancer are the leading causes of cancer deaths in women and have a significant negative societal impact in our region. Among Caribbean men, prostate cancer is the most common cause of cancer deaths, with lung cancer being second. Vaccination and screening programs are effective interventions to reduce the burden of specific types of cancer. Research shows that cervical cancer deaths are 2 to 9 times higher in the English and Dutch-speaking Caribbean compared to the USA. CARPHA says the number of deaths from cervical cancer is very concerning because this is the only cancer which is preventable through screening, early detection, treatment and vaccination against the human papillomavirus. The theme for World Cancer Day 2019 observed on Monday was I Am and I Will. It calls for a personal commitment to help reduce the global burden of cancer, as the fight to reduce cancer deaths cannot be achieved in isolation. And one economic expert says there are aspects of the impact of U.S. sanctions on Venezuela that are not being reported in the main media outlets. Prior to the latest imposition of U.S. sanctions on Venezuela, there were sanctions already in place imposed by the current U.S. administration. Reports indicate approximately half of Venezuela's oil exports ended up in the United States in spite of those earlier sanctions.
Well, most of the impact hasn't really been reported here, because I think the basic theme in the media is that everything that's gone wrong in Venezuela is a fault of the government. Of course, the government says there's an economic war, and they don't want to acknowledge that. So you don't even see reporting. So, for example, you had a collapse of oil production following the sanctions of August 2017. And you can see this on the graph. This graph is from Francisco Rodriguez of Torino Capital, and he published this. He actually published it with the Washington office on Latin America. And Torino Capital, Francisco himself is probably the leading expert and authority on the Venezuelan economy anywhere. And so, and there's no debate about the data. And you can see what happens this is a graph of oil production in Venezuela from 2013 to 2018. And for a while, of course, both graphs are flat. The orange one is Colombia, and the blue one is Venezuela. And so you can compare the two, and you can see they both decline at the same time and at roughly the same rate in response to the drop in oil prices. And then the Colombian oil production levels out, whereas after August 2017, Venezuela's production just falls through the floor. And that's a result of the sanctions. And the interesting thing is that even though this was published and it's readily available and there's absolutely no one who challenges it, none of the media, as far as I can tell, even reported this impact of the sanctions, that devastated Venezuela's oil production. And it's kind of strange because, most of these reporters and editors are in favor of the sanctions. And you would think they would at least want to report what the sanctions did. But they don't, and there's an almost military discipline about it. Nobody will talk about it. And of course, they don't talk about the other impacts of the sanctions, that this impact, but also the other impacts of the sanctions, do actually kill people by depriving them of access to medicines. That is, the loss of oil production means less dollars for the country and for the government, which means less medicines, life-saving medicines available. And then, of course, as it destroys the economy, and also because there are many other impacts as well that lead to a loss of life. So, for example, even though the sanctions don't say that financial institutions can't give credit for medicines or food, that ends up being the case. They end up not giving this credit because they're being conservative. They don't want to run into a legal problem with the U.S. government or get fined, hundreds of millions of dollars, as other governments have been for violating various sanctions that the United States has put on countries like Cuba or Iran or North Korea. So this is really the impact. The sanctions have an enormous impact on the economy. And the other impact that they have, of course, is they make it nearly impossible and maybe even impossible for the economy to recover from the devastating hyperinflation and depression that they have now.
It is believed that the fresh sanctions imposed recently could effectively reduce Venezuela's export income by approximately 50%. He says the sanctions make it nearly impossible for the economy to recover from the devastating hyperinflation and depression that Venezuela is currently experiencing.
I think that is the other thing that nobody reports, but any economist could tell you about this situation. The sanctions make it pretty much impossible for the government to implement probably the easiest way out of the economic crisis.
If you're HIV positive or have an STI, having unprotected sex with multiple partners puts them in grave danger. You'll expose every partner and their present and future partners to HIV or another STI. Use a condom every time you have sex. You can live a productive life even if diagnosed with HIV. Remember, early detection is key to your survival. Be responsible, protect yourself and others. Help stop the spread of HIV and other STIs.
To end the news, a look again at the headlines. Head of the Builders and Contractors Association wants a wider spread of money being spent on Dominica's current construction boom. The Ministry of Education maintains the size of school structures in spite of smaller student population, and a call for fresh training to keep taxi operators in line with tourism industry standards. Feel free to contact us at news@mapping2k4.com. You may access our past newscasts on our YouTube channel. On behalf of the production team, I am Julian Morris. Thank you for watching. Join us tomorrow.